Eine Biene. Eine Biene. Eine Biene. Hast du Zucker drauf gemacht mit der Hand? Eine Biene, die macht Summ, 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 Summ. Summ, Summ, Summ. Bienchen Summ. Ihre Steine. Recht nicht die Beine. Summ, 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 Summ. Bienchen Summ. Summ, Summ, Summ. Bienchen Summ.
Was haben wir heute für ein Datum? Oktober.
Oktober 2022 wäre.
Mesmo assim o céu estava azul. Samboré, Pemba, folha de Jurema, Oxóssi reina de norte a sul. Eu vi chover, eu vi relampear, mas mesmo assim o céu estava azul. Samboré, Pemba, folha de Jurema, Oxóssi reina de norte a sul.
Climate change is real. Extensive monocultures need excessive consumption of water and lead to desertification and depletion of our Earth's fertility. The resulting loss of topsoil is accelerating a downward spiral that leads to the ultimate annihilation of our planet's nature and biodiversity. We have to ask ourselves, what value has our environment to us? And how can we re-evaluate nature in a way that regeneration becomes an asset worth investing in? How can we boost regeneration? And what role do bees play in all of this? We just arrived at Tamera, an extraordinary center for all sorts of profound knowledge focused on peace for humankind and for nature. A very diverse group of experts is about to unleash their power of connected minds and hearts.
My name is Ramon. I'm a trained architect. My interest shifted from creating houses and solving problems on a smaller scale into solving problems on a bigger scale. Let's put it that way. That's how I ended up meeting Bernd, with who I've been working together for 2 years on issues of sustainability, carbon capture, and how to clean up the mess. Thank you.
I'm Paulo. Recently, I would say in 2 years' time, I got very interested in what do we really value and how natural are those values, how those values are synced to life at large. So my interest is in shifting economy so that what we deeply value, which I believe it's part of natural in us, comes true, and not what the economy seems to be valuing today, which sometimes is apparently the wrong things to value.
Jacek Adamczewski, pracuję w Wigierskim Parku Narodowym. Jestem pszczelarzem. Też z zawodu jestem leśnikiem, ale też ichtiologiem, czyli teraz pracuję w
Jaki duży jest?
Park 15 000 hektarów. I to jest park, w którym mamy jest projekt powracania pszczół do lasu, ponieważ one kiedyś żyły w lesie.
My name is Agata. Mechanical engineering, was very into renewables. I'm very into the global carbon budget and how countries are dealing with it. Now I'm doing research in carbon pricing and how to do a global transformation that is fine for everyone. That includes also the environment, also the economy, but also like social aspects. Yeah, and I'm a beekeeper since 9 years.
Mam na imię Andrzej, mieszkam w Polsce, jestem leśnikiem, jestem pszczelarzem i od 15 lat pszczelarzem leśnym. Miałem przyjemność być depozytariuszem kultury barwniczej, czyli osoby, która zaświadczyła o trwaniu, o czym jest ta kultura barwnicza dla historii ludzkości.
Hello, my name is Heinz Risse. I'm from Berlin, so I'm an urban beekeeper now, and I'm catching swarms inside Berlin, which is quite challenging. And 2014, I had 2 master beekeepers from Poland, Jacek and Andrzej, and they showed me how to do Zeitlerei and tree beekeeping. So it's not only conventional, it's a different type of beekeeping. And with Zeitlerei, I tried to give bees a voice.
Ich bin Bernd Schock, ich bin 51 Jahre alt. Ich entwickle seit 25 Jahren Unternehmen und Vereine mit dem ökologischen Impact. Und der Schwerpunkt war jetzt 20 Jahre lang Streuobstwiesenbiotope. Ich entwickle Produkte aus diesen Biotopflächen mit einem speziellen Corporate Design, um die jungen Zielgruppen auch anzusprechen und um den Impact auch zu transportieren. So wie der Heinz in der Stadt bin ich raus aufs Land gegangen mit dem Naturparken und mit den Forstbetrieben zusammen quasi Klotzbeuten, Bienenhöhlen aufgebaut.
My name is Silvano. I'm passionate about the big and the small water cycle, building water retention landscapes, forests, and I'm happy to give you later a tour about this work that we did.
My name is Krista. I hope to find some answer in Tamera, how to create a new system or a bit a different system from what I was living before. And here I'm working mainly in the ecology, and I'm also into the water retention work and taking care of our land.
My name is Denise, and I'm working and studying with several projects in Portugal in the area of regeneration and reforestation, and really building back depleted soils, so creating ecosystems that are sustainable and diverse, and also offer us a different approach to how we grow our food.
Yes, my name is Lars. I work since 7 years here in Alentejo. Since 2006, for me was clear there must be a paradigm change. I really learned that the most valuable lessons for reforestation, regeneration are in the book of nature, and that's really a beautiful book to read, and I'm still reading on it, and I don't know how many chapters there are, but I'm still very curious.
Ich bin meinem ersten Beruf Wasserbauingenieur, und als ich gemerkt habe, dass Wasserbauingenieure aber sehr viel Wasser verschlechtern und ich nicht gemerkt habe, dass irgendetwas mit lebendigem Wasser in meinem Studium vorkommt, habe ich dann meine Diplomarbeit über Pflanzenkläranlagen geschrieben. Also Kläranlagen, also die das Wasser verbessern mit Pflanzen. Also nach einer zusätzlichen Ausbildung als Waldorflehrer habe ich dann 18 Jahre Mathematik und Physik an der Waldorfschule in Tübingen unterrichtet. Und parallel habe ich mit dem Gartenbaulehrer eine Bienen-AG aufgebaut an der Schule und gleichzeitig eine kleine eigene Imkerei. Nach 18 Jahren Unterricht habe ich mich gefragt, was kommt jetzt noch Neues. Dann bin ich mit ökologisch arbeitenden Imkern zusammengekommen. Ich arbeite jetzt für einen Vereinigung für wesensgemäße Bienenhaltung.
So, my name is Annelieke. I was born in the Netherlands. My original education is industrial design engineering, and I've always been interested in how things could be more inclusive and how things that we create are supporting us as a society and in everything we want to do, instead of creating a clutter of more and more and more products. How can I come to a point where I feel that what I contribute is contributing something that comes really from the roots of life? And this has been a question, it continues to be a question, and it brings me to amazing places.
After an initial introduction round, we dive down into our very own hive culture. The Tamiran bee whisperer, Annie Like, is one of the main coordinators of this workshop and welcomes us warmly in the heart of Tamera. She summons with us the spirit of the bees that lies within all of us. As most of the participants are strangers to each other, she instructs us to visualize our connections in a playful way. As all tensions drop, we are forming our own swarm. Buzzing. Blessed. Protected. And guided.
So now we can see who is really already connected.
Connected since yesterday.
So this is one technique, building a retention space higher up in the landscape where the valleys get smaller and smaller. And in this case here, we combine it also with the road. So you're standing not just on the road, but you're also standing on the dam of this retention space. So when this is full, it continues being full really long, and there's the overflow. Because we want to try to keep as high as possible, as much water as possible.
Water. The source of all life. Tamera is famous for their lakes and freshwater sources. Both are the result of human intervention in nature. Silvano gives us a very detailed insight into Tamera's water retention works. He vividly redraws the history of how it was possible to convert a once dry landscape into a green paradise. Swales, streets, overflow basins. All play their role in this nicely orchestrated space. The plain eye is not able to see all of the landscape design's features. The artificial lakes have not been sealed like they would have been conventionally. Another huge topic in the area is the eucalyptus tree. Vast monoculture plantations are still heavily subsidized, causing immense harm to the ecosystem. Here in Tamera, Krista, one of our hosts, is a leading figure in the fight against these invasive trees. She explains the most recent countermeasures that aim to rebalance the local biodiversity.
Because in the valley also is most of the water. This you see on many places. And only one main thing why we wanted to do it ourselves is that we really wanted to take care that the trees make as little damage as possible.
Looking really forward to this day today, and it's such a diverse group of people and also ages and different backgrounds, and exactly this is maybe just to say what brought me and makes me like my heart beat to put these kind of group moments into motion. Thank you, Bernd, for opening my eyes to species-appropriate beekeeping. I'm looking forward to the next couple of days to unmystify a little bit of the stories around the bees and how we can bring concepts and landscapes together.
On our second day in Tamera, Annie Lieke not only unveils her personal relationship with bees, but she also shows us recent and past work of the Bee Wisdom Network that has been established in Portugal by her and other bee enthusiasts. We get a holistic perspective on what these life forms are and how they are energetically connected to each other and the world.
And I just would like that we visit the bee garden now so that you can have a feeling for this energy device and how it feels for you to be in this space. So that will be our first small excursion of the morning, that we go and visit the bee garden. How can we create a place that for the people in Tamera and for the people internationally connected with this place? So I would like to invite you into the space. Bring your love. We will start with a small prayer and with a gift of the bees. It's a mixture of propolis and artemisia. And then in silence you will just have time to be in the space, to feel if there are places where you are naturally attracted to, if you can connect maybe with your bees at home, and it's just for you.
The bee garden has opened our hearts and lifted our spirits. Now, after returning to the seminar space, Jacek and Agata open our minds and give us an introduction to what is called Seidlerei. It is the ancient form of beekeeping, where wild bees are kept in their natural habitats. Before bees were forced to live in boxes, they used to live in trees. Those habitat trees enabled the hive to reside on an average height of 6 meters above the ground. Seidlerei as a non-invasive form of beekeeping leaves the hive untreated with acid or other chemicals. The focus does not lie on the production of honey, rather than on the well-being of the swarm. With their own tools and their own profound understanding of the bees, the Seidlers are true master craftsmen of an own kind. In the second part of the exchange workshop, in Germany, we will learn about the biome of a forest, of which the Seidler and the bees are a crucial part of. Andrzej then continues with an in-depth presentation on the recent impact of Seidlerei. Not only is he telling us about how the wild forest bee populations are being increased and maintained, but also about the autoimmunity of these wild bees against parasites and diseases. We will later learn that this has something to do with the biome of the tree the hive is living in.
We have created this place 7 years ago because we realized that the trees we want to plant in our projects are not having the quality we want and also not the species we want, and also as an experimental place to learn how to propagate species. So there's definitely no economic interest, was never really the interest, was always to create diversity and life and not to create income, and also through Annelieke to create joy and happiness. I think that's a very important part of this place. And we were in the beginning mostly focused on very much native species because that's what we think belongs to the forest. And then after some time we realized if we do agroforestry or if we do reforestation in very degraded areas, it also makes sense to use some non-native species. So now we have, I'm not every year counting the species, but we have around like 40 native and 20 to 30 non-native species, which we make every year or every 2 years. And the seeds we collect mostly regional as much as possible, or from the botanical gardens in Barcelona, or like wherever like we think something is good for the region. In my opinion, because we also have nearly semi-arid regions and we could prepare So now I bought a lot of argan, which can grow very good here, I think, in the future. And we have there like a little shade house where we simulate a forest, which is quite shady for the seedlings. When they're a bit bigger, we bring them here where it's a bit more light. So we don't have an economic interest, but still we sell to our network.
Alentejo is on the forefront of desertification. The local fauna can withstand harsh natural conditions, but the damage that has been done by humankind over centuries might welcome sometimes a little help in order to be fixed.
Garden. And it's really like
Juna and the group of German settlers have done an excellent job in reactivating an old piece of cultural landscape that has a long history back to the Roman times. Now, as the land itself heals, it helps healing people. We follow Annie Leakey into the open landscape. She wants to show us a series of different log hives. We are all excited to see the first wild Iberian bees. The first spot, a tree, where the bees nested very close to the ground, almost inside the root system, is abandoned. A log hive that has been erected by the bee wisdom people seems inactive as well. Eventually, somebody spots a hornet that went in and disappears. As we further examine the log, we finally hear some buzzing. Here they are. They created a defensive system with propolis at the entrance. The hornet must have already been eliminated by the bees. The third spot is a giant olive tree, where bees used to have a colony in the trunk. As the sun slowly sets, we return to Tamera. By the time it gets dark, the final lecture series of the day is starting. Harold takes us on a very colorful trip through the flora of Portugal. Not only is he a veteran beekeeper, but also a versatile botanist with a profound knowledge regarding local plants and their synergy with the bees. He also draws the historical outlines of how the once natural landscapes have shifted, and how this shift affects nowadays ecosystems and, of course, the bees. Heinz shows the bees in a more global context. His aim is to give the bees a voice. How are they? What do we, as humans, need to understand to protect them? Why do humans harm them? He postulates that we should not interfere with their natural way of life, nor should we treat them with man-made substances. Norbert, on the other hand, continues the evening with a specific characterization of a bee population as an own being, as one own entity. He points out that Rudolf Steiner, the renowned founder of anthroposophy, has categorized bees on a higher level of consciousness than all other animals, and has stated out that bees shall be examples for the evolution for the human society. Norbert has more than over 30 years of experience, and he shares with us very delicate and intrinsic findings about how he encountered the individual entity of a hive. He says that one bee has a life cycle of 6 weeks. After 2 months the whole hive is completely reborn, but what he described as being can be refound even after this complete renovation process. It can be described as a transcendental phenomenon. The strongest example of how bees should be a role model for us humans is the fact that they are mostly concerned, not about their own well-being but about the well-being of the coming generations. Everything must be prepared and ready so that those who come afterwards can survive in abundance. To picture this for humans, he quotes renowned Professor Dr. Jürgen Torz.
In unser eigenes Verständnis von, ich sag mal, Vermehrung übertragen, dann wäre das Beispiel folgendes. Mein Sohn, meine Tochter kommen mit Freund oder Freundin zu mir und sagen, wir würden gerne eine Familie gründen. Und dann sage ich, ja, das finde ich gut. Hier ist der Haustürschlüssel, hier ist der Autoschlüssel. Ich nehme einen Rucksack für 3 Tage mit und und mache einen totalen Neuanfang. Also, ja, und dieser Neuanfang ist bei einem Bienenvolk, und das haben wir ja bei der Ausführung auch von Heinz gehört, dass dieser Neuanfang ist existenziell. Viele überleben den nächsten Winter nicht. So, und zum Schluss will ich ein Beispiel noch nehmen, was man nur feststellen kann, wenn man Hightech im Bienenvolk einsetzt. Das waren auch Forschungen an der Universität in Würzburg, wo Dr. Tautz mit Studenten den Wärmekörper eines Bienenvolkes untersucht hat, an verschiedenen Stellen 16 Wärmesensoren eingebaut hat. Und dann waren diese Forschungen beendet, dann hat sich um diese Bienenvölker niemand mehr gekümmert. Die Wärmesensoren sind aber weitergelaufen. Und dann ist es vorgekommen, dass von diesen vernachlässigten Bienenvölkern im Sommer Bienenvölker verhungert sind. Dann hatte ein Student die Aufgabe, diese gestorbenen Bienenvölker wegzuräumen, also abzuräumen. Und der hat sich dafür interessiert, was denn die Wärmesensoren angezeigt haben, als das Bienenvolk gestorben ist. Was meint ihr denn, was dieser Student gesehen hat, als er die Sensoren ausgelesen hat? Und meine Prognose war, dass das Bienenvolk immer kleiner wird, die Überlebenden schließlich auch sterben und dass das dann die letzten sind. Und dann hat Dr. Tautz gesagt, nein, so war es nicht. De facto war es so, dass alle 16 Wärmesensoren Wärme angezeigt haben und innerhalb von einer halben Stunde alle 16 Wärmesensoren keine Wärme mehr, also ein Abfallen der Wärme angezeigt haben. Das hat mich richtig tief berührt, weil klar war, dass sich die Bienen ihre Vorräte bis auf den letzten Tropfen teilen. Und dann sterben alle.
Okay, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Al Jazeera. Thank you all for coming. So this is the Área Protegida Privada. It's the private protected area of Val das Amoreiras. It's a privately owned piece of land that has a legal protection that was enabled through members of our association that helped the landowner create this. It's like a nature reserve. So it's a very special kind of native oak and cork oak forest, and yeah, let's go and have a look. This is our association, Rewilding Sudoeste.
Im Europavergleich sind wir wirklich bestens ausgestattet mit Naturwaldresten. Wir haben Rhododendron-Schluchtwald, Wacholder, Dünenwald. Der 4. Wald, da sind wir hier, das ist eben mediterraner oder iberischer Eichenwald. Und der zeichnet eben sich aus durch die Korkeichen, aber vor allen Dingen durch die Präsenz von Nicht-Korkeichen.
And then when you get to the drier, more exposed areas, it's more scrubland with madroño, or the strawberry tree, and other cork, more cork oaks. And then in our very steep rocky ravines, more in the hills, we come into our rhododendron forest.
My name's Jack Goltz, and I live in Al Jazeera and work in nature conservation. I work with bees and I work with the forest, and this is all I want to do right now, and I see it as the only way anything's going to change is if someone does something, so I'm doing something. I have a honeybee rewilding project where I use cork hives to recreate natural habitat. Also, I work in the forest with a team of people restoring ecological areas, managing biotopes and habitats.
As human beings, we make part of nature, but have the advantage to have a view on it which is maybe a bit different as professionals than other people, and this gives us the duty to explain nature to others, because I think in these days it's very important to have someone explaining nature, because we can only protect what we understand.
Angela. Haben wir alle drauf?
Mama, komm her.
Bees.
Our project here is one of the oldest rewilding projects in Portugal. In some cases it's good to get older because you can see plants grow. Claudia knows better, I think 20...
It was December 96.
Okay, this one was a baby big as, it's another species, but like this. Okay,
These trees were really
very
less than
small
10
ones.
centimeters high.
So why does this work so good? First, the climate is here very good. Frost we have, but never long hours of frost. So it's very short in a day. When we have in the morning maybe -2, the rest of the day we have +18. Things like this. Then we have humidity the whole year round. So the Atlantic influence is very important. And so the trees grow 4 times quicker than in Central Europe. And it is not only cork, it is as well the trees, these oaks we have seen in the natural forest we have been this morning.
Trees they planted. 200,000 trees they were planted in May.
In May?
And they were irrigated every fortnight in July.
And it's really a shame that they had consultants not by us, and it's really gone. And therefore we are strictly against planting. And there's a second reason. There are studies that a lot of nursery plants, especially the tree species, are contaminated with Phytophthora.
Yeah.
Phytophthora is an organism, so to say, it's a disease, an organism which came from Asia mainly. In Asia it's not a problem, but here in Europe it's a problem. And so when you buy trees in nurseries, they are often contaminated with Phytophthora. There are studies proving this. And therefore let nature resolve. Here in this stand we have Phytophthora because a lot of cork oaks are suffering by Phytophthora. But as we are not stripping the cork, the trees can survive with this. There are only very few dying, and they survive it. But planting which is wasting energy, it's polluting the air because there's always transport, and you need water and you need digging and all these things. Let nature resolve the problem and take a chair, sit in the forest and wait. It's the best you can do. Oh, come, let's go. Where's the chair?
This is what I'm asking.
I grew up here, so I was born in England, but I grew up in a valley just around the corner. I never realized how amazing the bee world was until one day a friend of mine came to my house specifically to tell me, Jack, you need to have bees. And I said, anyway, and then I got into the natural side of treatment-free beekeeping, and no pesticides was my main. I thought, why do I want bees if I have to treat them with chemicals? I don't think, why would I need to, you know? And then I came back to Portugal and soon realized how the local Portuguese and other people in the Iberian Peninsula had their hives made from cork for hundreds of years, and I thought, well, this is definitely the way to go. I didn't have any cork at the time, and I managed to get this one. It wasn't a very wide piece like the traditional, so I thought, well, if it's a bit too thin, maybe I can use it differently, and I'll use it horizontally. So I put this in a fork of a cork tree, like the tree you see behind you. Yeah, within a few weeks, after I put a bit of comb in there and I rubbed it with some lemon balm, the first scout bees showed up, and I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting what was going to happen. And I was working one day in front of the hive, or nearby, and I heard something like a helicopter or something, and a swarm came across the valley, and I was lucky enough to be there, and I watched the whole thing, and they all moved in, and they all moved inside the entrance, and I just, no words really. And then like half an hour later, even more crazy, like another swarm came, which must have been a secondary swarm. And I was like, what's going on? Dude, like I'd never seen a swarm, you know, I just read about them and watched videos, and then suddenly it was all happening very fast. And this swarm moved off into the forest, and I chased it and found it, and it was on a bush. And then I had only one more cork hive, and I took it there, and I was with my father, and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, it's okay, we take the bees and we put them in the hive. And I walked it all the way home, put it in a tree, and they lived there. And I had another hive that I collected a swarm, and they lived for over 1.5 years, and they didn't make it after that, but it gave me hope, you know. They didn't live forever, you know, but I thought I might be onto something here. There might be some reason why this is working. And then luckily enough, I started getting involved with people that are doing these things, and I met Anneliek through someone in America who put me in contact with Michael Thiele, and I was like, classic, you know. I'm talking to someone in America who's introducing me to someone in Odmira. I was like, yeah, classic. So after my first year, I thought, let's try put more of these up, and I put up about 30 on different properties, and not more than 2 or 3 on a piece of land, but from Odmira to Lagos and into the mountains of Moshik a little bit. Just tried to spread them out and try to experiment, see what works, see what doesn't work. I'm still learning a lot, and I'm really grateful to meet people like you that can teach me so much. You can come and have a look. This has had the original colony live inside, and since then another colony's been inside. It's completely covered in propolis. It smells incredible, but for my first 2 years I never saw inside of this until they died, so I just watched them from the outside. Then I thought, okay, well, I started working with a friend, a carpenter, Leo. He couldn't make it today, and he came up with an idea. We put a window in, so he made the interior door, so that goes inside and is fixed again with clay, and then this one goes on top, so you can come in and just have a look, see what they're doing. And the bees have really finished the work off. You can see they glued it in, so they're very. So this was the second swarm I ever collected at my neighbour's house. Put this swarm in this hive, and they lived for 18 months. And then when they stopped, when the activity stopped, I opened it up, and this was the first thing I saw. So it was the last comb, and this was like just the most incredible piece of art. You know, it's so thick and just incredible. And each successive comb had different smells and different flavors, and it was really amazing. That's what I did, and we have a lot of these up now. I've tried to take a lot of notes. I'd like to show this to the beekeepers, what I see, what time of day, weather, the pollen, what's coming in, just to get maybe some record of why they're dying or when, and just some kind of data. And I've tried different exits, different entrances, different sizes, orientations, lots of different things to try and establish some kind of correlation between survival rates and what I'm doing. The only real thing that I've figured out so far is, so this is from a dead cork tree found in the forest that the cork people have collected, and it has all the rotten wood inside. Where these ones, if they've been harvested, they on the inside, the cork is like this, it's super smooth, and it takes more time, I think, for them to cover it in propolis. So with this one, all of the ones that we have now that are surviving, they are in these kind of hives. So I don't know, maybe there's a link with the mycelium, the rotting wood. It's more of this situation with the clean hive, they wouldn't find ever in nature. So maybe this is what they prefer. Maybe the irregularities of the surface or something with the propolis. Something that we also have realized is that the more native the forest, the higher the chance of the survival is at the moment, from what I've seen. Like I say, I don't take any honey while they're alive, but when they do fail, I'll take a bit of honey. We'll take what's in there, and it's the best I've ever tried. You know, it's unreal. And all the propolis, and just being able to sit with the bees. You guys know, anyone that's had bees is just. So that's what I'm doing. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, but come and smell them. Thank you.
We leave Jack, Udo, and Claudia with remarkable memories. the amount of knowledge and insights we were able to get a glimpse of is overwhelming. The final destination of this day is a small primary school in Al Jazua where Lars shed some light on his philosophy of reforestation.
I am really convinced that also our food source comes from forest, because many fruit trees, they come originally from a forest. So I think it's really important to combine the forest with our future food production.
After that, we get a brief introduction to the emission trade market and carbon capture methodologies with Agatha. She gives us an in-depth view on recent developments, strengths, but also weaknesses of global climate policies. Most importantly, she presents us the scientific evidence that underlines the importance and urgency of climate-positive action. Bern takes us on a tour through his history of what is called sustainability sponsoring. He is a pioneer in Germany. More than 2 decades ago he was the first to monetize nature with the goal not to exploit it, but rather to reward stewardship of ecological processes. 20 years ago he started with orchard meadows, the small rainforests of Germany, and was able to design an organic juice brand made from ripe fallen fruits from these landscapes. Osmost became an iconic organic enterprise with a strong base in Berlin. The reward for stewardship of certain developments also concerns Paulo. He introduces us to the framework he and his fellow colleagues are working on. The prosperity pool is a tool to display the abundance in which we seem to unknowingly exist. This mentality of abundance can shift a mental state of scarcity to a mental state of generosity. If we recognize all the values that are non-monetary, but in between the lines, social, ecological, philanthropical, we might be able to reward those individuals that contribute to the restoration of our ecosystem and the healing of mind and body. In order to measure this impact, he introduces us to the Life Contribution Index. It can be seen as a sort of sustainability development goals not for sovereign states, but for human individuals. Berlin City. A vast conglomerate of concrete blocks, but with a considerably green space in between them. We all heard of urban gardening. But what about urban beekeeping? Heinz takes us on a small trip through a very particular urban landscape.
Hello, good morning, my name is Heinz Risse. I'm the beekeeper here in the lovely Princess Garden. The Princess Garden, in German Prinzessinnengarten, is a garden, and also it's a cemetery. And we're a few beekeepers here taking care about all these beehives, and I will show you some of them. This is also a very extensive beehive. It's called Weißenseifener Hängekorb, in English Sunhive. And the bees are happy up in the air, about 3 meters up in the air. And this hive is made of straw, clay and cow shit. And bees have a very, very nice home. It's a luxury home for the bees. So the hive is as close to a cap as possible, but it has a very nice shape. So this shape is according to a bee swarm. The bee swarm is very much similar to this home of the bees, and this hive was created by an artist. The artist was called Günther Manke. He died 2 years ago, but he wanted that the bees can live in a shape which is ideally the shape in nature as well, and not squared boxes we usually put on the ground. So you can't harvest much honey here because it's not foreseen for honey harvesting. It's just that the bees are happy in this luxury home. So the entrance underneath here is the bees can fly in and out from every angle, so there's no direction to north, south, east or west. Okay, so the next hive we are going to visit is the Bienenkiste, the flying Bienenkiste. It is in German it's fliegende Bienenkiste. For the queen, and she's laying eggs there and building the colony. And this is the space for the honey, if they have enough honey. So honey is far away from the entrance. This is the entrance. And this is what the beekeeper can collect if they have enough. Oh. Went down, come on.
It's his baby.
Yeah. I need to come here. They like the warmth. They like your warmth.
Yeah, I'm a bit warmer than your fingers.
Yes.
As we continue our tour around the garden, a member of the gardening collective joins us and explains how everything is self-organized and what values are created. People grow their vegetables and herbs here, in the heart of the German capital. A very nice example of carbon-free consumption and urban community. It's time for the next stop. Nearby Tempelhof Airport. An abandoned international airport that has been transformed into a humongous park. One part of this open field are the urban gardens of New Cologne. We are struck by the vastness and the beauty of the nature that has partially reclaimed the airfield. We then meet Anya from Meta Walls. She gives us a brief outline of her NFT art project in which street art is archived and preserved on the blockchain in the metaverse.
I feel fine. I'm really glad. Immortal street art, because street art is very immortal. It's very fluctuative, right? There is a lot of vandalism, gentrification, a lot of outside factors.
We discuss tokenomics and its impact on our society. Smart contracts have the power to substitute money on basis of common goods as art, music, ecology.
And everyone is saying, oh, it's all about onboarding people into Web3 and blockchain. I say no, it's about onboarding blockchain into real life. It's about finding the gaps and looking, can we solve this problem while using NFT? Can we solve this problem while using Metaverse?
As the sun sets, we say goodbye to Berlin and head into the woods. To a place called Dry Icon. A center for ecological education about 1 hour east of Berlin. Inside a nature park, surrounded by a beautiful German forest. Bernd Schock has established here the first official dependence for Zieglerei in Germany. In the following days we will dive deep into the forest to get a better understanding on how this form of landscape is commercially used, in an almost non-invasive way.
Flora, Fauna, Habitat ist ein europäisches Schutzgebietssystem Pritzhagener Berge. Wir sind europäisches Vogelschutzgebiet komplett, Naturpark, Landschaftsschutzgebiet. Also alte, starke Bäume wie die hier, die Rubine, die hier steht, hier vorne, die werden also jetzt wirklich bewusst stehen gelassen, bis sie irgendwann mal abstirbt. So, das hat zwei Aspekte. Der erste ist, die Imker freuen sich über die alte Rubine, weil die eben sehr viel Honig oder Nektar gibt. Und wenn ich sie stehen lasse, sind die anderen Baumarten, gerade hier die Schattbaumarten, also gerade die Winterlinde, in der Lage sozusagen die Verjüngung, die mögliche Verjüngung der Rubine, die oft hier aus den Stockausschlägen oder aus der Wurzel kommt, sozusagen in Schach zu halten oder auszudunkeln.
Forester Andre takes us on a long walk through his forest. The knowledge he shares with us is extraordinary. Not only gives he insights in why so-called habitat trees are important for the gene pool and how they are preserved, he also tells us a lot of details regarding the history of the legal constraints. His forest is commercially used, but one literally is not able to notice this by any evidence. The walk ends up in a heated discussion with biologist Sigrun about how much revenue 1 hectare of forest annually creates, and how the revenue can be boosted by a distinct funding of each habitat tree, with an eco-credit system that is yet to be invented.
Die Chance, zum Beispiel, so einen Habitatbaum über ein NFT zu sichern und den quasi zu monitoren und den zu kartografieren. Und wenn der zum Beispiel dann weil es ein besonderer Habitatbaum ist, da gibt es verschiedene Größen, ne? Also umso größer.
Aber ich meine, es ist eigentlich klar, ne? Also wenn ich es einigermaßen gut gemacht habe, müsstet ihr jetzt wissen, was bei der Studie rauskommt.
Sigrun is also the one who presents her latest studies after the forest walk. As a renowned biologist and an author of professional literature, she manages to give us access to absolutely mind-blowing content. Her presentation is about the latest studies of how a diverse hologenome and an intact microbiome are crucial for the resistance against diseases and parasites. Hologenome is an assemblage of a host and the many other species living in or around it, forming a discrete ecological unit through symbiosis. Microbiome is the community of microorganisms that can usually be found living together in any given habitat. Can bees become resistant against the varroa mites if you let them live inside the trunk of a habitat tree? Together with more than 3,000 different species of microorganisms and fungi, the microbiome of a bee swarm inside a habitat tree tends to be much more autoimmune to any given outside threat. One has to wait for the publication of Sigrun's latest book in 2023, where she shed light on the details of the newest scientific findings. To us, she was willing to give an in-depth preview. A true game changer so far.
I'm Peter Torkler. I'm working for Rewilding Oder Delta since 3 years now. And then at the end of the 90s, I started to work with WWF on the German-Polish border. I started there already to work and fight for the Odra River, which was already under planning for regulation and shipping improvements. So that was a fight that goes back before 2000. And there I also started in transnational German-Polish projects to support sustainable regional development in the area of mainly Voivodeship Dolnośląskie. For many, many years I started to work on policy issues. I worked for WWF in Germany, but with a strong link to the European Policy Office in Brussels, where I worked on all issues related to agriculture reform, related to EU accession of the new member states. And then for, let's say, another 7 to 8 years, I worked on the whole EU budget, transferring it to a more sustainable and green budget, trying to shift the subsidies towards more environmental financing, which didn't work so well with agriculture, but for example, with the structural, the regional development funds, I think there was a lot of happening in the last 2 reforms, where ecosystem services and green infrastructure were recognized as a case for financing. So I was very much involved at this time to work with all NGOs active in Brussels to support it. And then from 2015 to 20, I was a managing director of the International Baltic Sea Foundation, which financed projects around the whole Baltic Sea for nature conservation. And then in 2020, I joined Rewilding Oder Delta, where I was supposed to develop the program as a transboundary area, especially in Poland, because we realized that there's a lot of funding potential and project activities. A lot of people are working in nature conservation, but in Poland there's very few organizations. Financing is very difficult, so I was supposed to expand the work more towards Poland, and since 3 years we are advancing quite fast. When I started, we were like 2 people in Rewilding Oder Delta. Now we are 12 people. The idea of rewilding, of course, I think the term was already developed about 30 years ago, somewhere in America with the big landscapes, but in Europe it was 2011 that a group of nature conservation guys mainly from WWF Netherlands, started a new foundation, Rewilding Europe, with the idea to change a bit the idea of traditional conservation towards rewilding in big landscapes. Why this happened? I think they observed a big change in the landscapes of Europe. Many rural areas started to become depopulated. A lot of people, especially in South Europe, left villages, and the traditional farming system was, let's say, there was more abandonment and more kind of unwanted development started to happen. And the other thing was also that since the 70s, when the conservation movement started, we saw a huge success in many species to come back. You know, the population of bears, wolves, cranes, all sea eagles, many species that were heavily threatened, they started to recover because of many positive achievements in the nature conservation. But of course, we are still, and you know, the third observation was that we're losing still biodiversity in a high frequency, and we're losing the connectivity of habitats. So the key is that although the species recover, they have no space anymore to migrate, to mix up. The genetic diversity is threatening. So I think many ideas that rewilding came up with, in principle, Sigrun already explained from the micro scale. I think you just need to change the name to macro scale, because it's nearly the same. And you know, one picture I have still from my teacher in biology is, you know, if you have an ecosystem, you know, which is a huge pile of sand, you can take a hand off and, you know, the pile stands. But if you have an ecosystem of big, few species, let's say, which are big bricks, and you take one away, everything collapses. So I think this is the picture that I have for biodiversity, you know.
Klotzbeutel suchen mit Bernd. That you have in those public forests, especially in Berlin, the focus is not on the production of wood. So you have like 3 main functions in the forest. Maybe Andreana yesterday told you as well. We have those, maybe someone can repeat it. So you have like that you can need the forest for buildings and the wood for buildings and burning, and then for recreation for you when we go, and then you can breathe, and for sustainability, to clean the air, to that we have like good water in the soil. The main focus in private forests is normally the need or to sell the wood to the industry, so that the forest owner gets money for it. And in Berlin, because it's in public forest, it's the biggest public forest in Europe, about 30,000 hectares. And they have focused on recreation and those different functions for cleaning the air, to produce like good water and stuff. And that's why you are free to choose what system you need to harvest the wood. Just for comparison, like this kind of tree, like a standing old tree, like a dead tree, includes about 3,000 different organisms, species inside. So like fungi, like microorganisms, insects, all the stuff. And on the ground lying dead wood includes about not more than 800, 1,000 species. So this one is really, really, really necessary for the ecosystem of the forest. And that's a habitat tree.
Ich habe Klotzbeuten oder auch lebende Bäume, wo ich Bienen, also die ich genau so nach diesem Prinzip ausgehöhlt habe, wo unten nichts zu finden ist, weil einfach das Wabenwerk über diese 1 Meter Höhe gewachsen ist, unten vielleicht noch 3 Zentimeter Platz ist. Das halten die Bienen komplett sauber. Wenn du eine Höhle hast, im natürlichen Baumstamm, wo gegebenenfalls unter dem Bienensitz alles, was runterfällt, sozusagen noch 1 Meter runterfallen kann, da sieht das ganz anders aus. Da hast du im Prinzip viel reichhaltigeres lebendes Substrat, so will ich jetzt mal sagen, von Mikroorganismen bis vielleicht zu Käfern und vielleicht sogar Mäusen. Ja?
After an extensive guided tour through the surrounding woods, a physical workshop awaits us. Today, we will experience what it's like to work on a tree like a Zeidler. Bernd has already prepared tree trunks. He introduces us to the traditional tools and together with him we start to excavate the trunks.
Das sind jetzt die traditionellen Zeidler-Werkzeuge. Jetzt springen wir wieder von dem pädagogischen Konzept, was wir als Idee haben, zu der Zeidlerei, wo wir herkommen. Und ich habe quasi da diese Werkzeuge vom Umweltministerium finanziert bekommen. Die haben das bezahlt. Das ist quasi nach polnischer, ich sage jetzt mal nicht Tradition, aber nach polnischem Vorbild, so wie sie die auch drunten haben, habe ich 12 Sets machen lassen und dadurch können wir halt auch mit 12 Klotzbeuten auf einmal herstellen. Das heißt, wir haben immer so Gruppen mit zwischen 12 und 24 Leuten. Und das ist quasi so eine Art Stemmeisen, ein Langstemmeisen mit einem Hebel.
We then get the chance to climb high up to the hive inside a trunk and visit a living colony. In the evening, Krista shows us her apiary in Portugal and how they managed to fight the Asian hornet. She then impresses us with a presentation about her actual work. As an agricultural engineer, she is very much interested in protecting the diversity of the agricultural landscape, both socially and economically. She points out that there is a huge gap in between traditional and big corporation in terms of funding and support. Only 7% of the landowners own patches with more than 100 hectares but receive more than 90% of subsidies. 93% of the landowners are small families that mainly do traditional, ecologically sustainable agriculture and they receive none to very little support. How can their ecological impact be rewarded? Is there any way to preserve those cultural structures and family bonds? Maybe the presentation of Ramon on regenerative finance can give an answer to that. He tells us about the core principles of the REFI movement. He states that if you follow the value chain of every currency back far enough, you will always find ecological degradation. This means that all that we create monetarily is based on the destruction of nature. Whether it is mining, drilling, or cutting trees. He shows the examples of 3 decentralized autonomous organizations that use the power of the blockchain to develop an impact credit system. Whether it is incentivizing landowners of Amazonian rainforest to not burn and sell their land. Or creating a local economy with an own digital currency in order to get out of the chokehold of the dollar. Even selling NFTs that bind art and terrain in one smart contract. The new possibilities are yet to be tested, but they enable us to think out of the box and to boldly go where no one has gone before. New questions arise. What is the biome of our society? How can we restore it? How can we transform it?
There's a lot of bad things happening, but there's a lot of good things happening, and that's I think the main thing we have to focus on is just, look at the bright side, focus on the good things that are happening, and remember what we can do, and we can do a lot, so I'm hopeful.
Well, I think the future is dependent on the now, and since we are really many people who are going into regeneration and we are concerned about challenges we are facing, and we are doing something, I really look very positive, especially when I see what happened those days. Those people are so beautiful, open-minded people in regeneration, and I'm happy to look into the future.
You mean these past days?
You can look at I can see two scenarios. I try to always to see positive and to see that there will be a change, a turn, that they survive and we survive, and that mainly we humans find again the connection to the nature and to the whole. And I think this is the only way to survive, especially we. I think the nature will survive in a way. But I hope we turn that everything goes faster.
I think the future should be greener and much more ecological than it is nowadays. And we, with our association, for example, are starting to give very good examples, in a way, not very complicated examples that others can adopt to make the same way or the same approach like we did. And with the association we have as well, in a way, the means, the audience to make workshops and to give these good examples into the world.
Maybe can I add, in this situation we have to accelerate, and to accelerate means that we come from example to action.
Ja, ich finde es wichtig, dass ein europaweiter Austausch stattfindet, gerade im ökologischen Bereich, weil ich ganz fest davon überzeugt bin, dass ökologische Gedanken in der Landwirtschaft, in der Forstwirtschaft, aber auch in der Tierproduktion, sprich in der Bienenhaltung, ganz, ganz wichtig sind, um diesen starken Tendenzen, die einfach durch die konventionelle Landwirtschaft, Waldwirtschaft und so weiter reinkommen, um denen entgegenzuwirken. Und meiner Meinung nach ist Ökologie wirklich das, was in die Zukunft trägt, das andere nicht.
When we come together and we start to see how everything is connected, and we start to see what our role can be, and that everybody feels like, oh, this is something where I can find myself and where I can find my joy. So I see that when we come together, and when we, what inspires me is when we come together about something we love, and something in which we can also see what is possible, because like this weekend we have been visiting each other's projects, and when we are there and we see what is possible, and we start to see like, wow, we are so many little dots everywhere, and these dots can be connected, and we are the people who can find other ways to do that together with the forest and the bees and all the other beings. And for me, this richness of all of us coming together, all of us doing our thing, and really also appreciating that everybody is really doing their thing, and to be willing to see what each creature, even the eucalyptus and the varroa, like all these things that we maybe want to fight, what all of us can contribute. And this way of, yeah, that's enough.
At the moment, I don't know, actually, where are we going? But I always am very hopeful, and personally I'm an optimist. I don't have a pessimistic view, and I think also, especially the bees and all their connection to nature gives us very much hope that things will turn out all right in the end. Yeah.
To, co zobaczyłem w Portugalii,
to mnie troszeczkę zaniepokoiło, bo wyobraziłem sobie przyszłość lasów w Polsce, tam gdzie mieszkam, jak one mogą wyglądać. Powiedziałem podczas rozmowy, że nadzieja umiera ostatnia, także jest szansa.
No przyszłość nie wygląda najlepiej, ale chciałbym jak najwięcej od siebie dać właśnie dla przyrody, tak? Czyli chciałbym, żeby te pszczoły żyły w zgodzie z naturą.
Oh, you're the brave one. You come out and say hi to everyone, huh?